Honestly, we probably should have come into the party music.
Okay. Oh, I know that everybody can hear me. We have a delay.
Yes.
Still can't see the go. Like, I can't click.
That's why we have the beautiful cardboard sign in the meantime.
There we are. Now I see myself.
All right.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome to this week's episode of the best podcast out there that now has entry music, courtesy of Brittany.
Yeah.
It sounds really good. You guys should go to Spotify and listen to last episode. Just like in the first minute, you'll hear the entry music and our beautiful, almost synchronized introduction.
Oh my God. We're so charming.
We're like
Seriously.
90% synchronized.
Yeah. And that only took us 15 minutes. And you writing like the script down on a
No,
slide.
I have it right here. Okay. This is what we were trying to follow. You can see I have my skin issues and there's vitamin E stains all over our cardboard sign as if it couldn't get any worse.
If that's not teacherish, I don't know what is. Skin issues and like an acrostic poem. Like
yes, exactly. Man, my students called me out for it too, like 2 weeks ago. We were talking about something. And I was like, yeah, everybody has problems. Like, I have problems too. And they were like, yeah, isn't your skin falling off your hands? I'm like, wow, okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I feel like you could say something to the effect that, well, actually, like it was something that give you superpowers. Like, you know how like Daredevil lost his eyesight with the spill, like that happened on the
show.
Yeah, like
it's definitely a missed opportunity.
Yeah,
I could have definitely started some lore in the middle.
Oh, absolutely! Storytelling is so powerful, and then you can like throw in all that content that you need to teach.
Exactly. It's funny you say that too, because last year a new teacher started in our middle school, and he came in with a black eye from playing basketball. And so we were like, hey, why don't we all make up different stories of how you got that black eye? And we just really confused the kids the first week of school. Oh my God. Yes. And so that was what we all did. We all had different, like, very incredible tall tales about how he got this black eye, like fighting with pirates. He fell into the cheetah cage at the zoo. Just like really outrageous things no one would believe. And the kids were comparing stories and notes. It was honestly incredible.
I'm telling you, if you want to know how to sustain yourself in the profession, it's stuff like that. Like,
exactly.
Have fun. You have to.
Yes.
Oh, and these kids are hilarious too.
They are. I was laughing I can't speak right now. When I laugh so hard, I start crying. That's one of my things. And the kids got me this past week. They called me out for my coffee addiction. And they were like, don't you drink like 4 cups of coffee a day? And I was like, I just lost it. I was beside myself cracking up. And they were like, why is she laughing so hard?
So when I was pregnant, one of my students asked me, or no, they didn't even ask me. I swear, Ash, it was like I was in like month 8. Okay, so I was like 2 months from giving birth. And I tell them that I'm going to be out of school because I'm pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I'm clearly pregnant. And I say, okay, guys, well, so-and-so is going to take over my room because I'm going to be on maternity leave because I'm pregnant. And this student looks at me like, you're pregnant? And I'm like, yeah, Brian, like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, oh, I thought you were just getting fat. I'm like, yes, man. I love the way you just said that with like no judgment. Like, nah, dude, I'm pregnant. Like,
my gosh.
My favorite story. Like,
honesty. I know. Kids have a way of asking women about being pregnant. That's one of my first viral videos on TikTok. I recorded me telling my students I was resigning at my previous school. Mm-hmm. And I was like very emotional. I loved that group. And I was like, I have something to tell you guys. It's a pretty big deal. And one of the kids goes, oh my gosh, are you having a baby? I was like, what?
No, actually.
But thank you for that comic relief right now. Well, anyways, should we get into the episode today, Britt?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So this week's episode is lures for learning. I was practicing saying this word with Brittany before we went live. Lures for learning.
Yes.
Also, I don't know if people can tell on here. I do have a speech impediment that often gets mistaken for an accent. Can you tell?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, I think it's not, I don't think it sounds like an accent. It just sounds like a speech impediment.
People ask me what country I'm from. I used to say Genovia from the Princess Diaries.
Oh my God. And I'm the princess?
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Aww, Ash.
Yes, there are a few words I stumble on. But this chapter is chapter 8 in Punished by Rewards. And I can never remember who summarized first last time.
You did.
So it's your turn.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's my turn. Look, I was getting my timer ready too. Like I didn't have to do it first. No, okay. I'm ready.
All right. I'm ready too.
Okay.
On your mark. Get set. Go.
Okay, so this is chapter 8, Punished by Rewards, and it talks about how we try to get students to be motivated in learning, but we really don't need to motivate them to learn because the brain, from the moment that it comes out of utero, is designed to take an information and process that information and play with that information. We do not need to motivate students to learn. They are intrinsically motivated from the start. We can see that with how babies and toddlers play and learn to walk and learn about their world. So Alfie, now that we're on a first name basis with him, he argues that through going through the system of education, we actually start killing the intrinsic motivation of students to learn. And then he brings up the fact that students or kids are much more effective learners when they are intrinsically motivated. He brings up controlling structures that we put in place to try to get learners to feel motivated to learn. Controlling structures that we put in place to get students to be motivated to learn, and the fact that we put so much emphasis on control and rewarding that it ends up really killing students' drive, and it ends up emphasizing more of the getting the reward and like trying to figure out what my grade is over instilling a love of learning. 4,
wow.
3. Was that good?
2, 1. That was really good.
I feel like that was good.
That was incredible. It sounded like you should have been reading it off of a teleprompter. Does that fancy new ringlet you have come with a teleprompter?
No, but I wish it did. That's another app that costs $29.99 a month.
A teleprompting app?
I don't know. I just made that up.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, like
I mean, honestly,
they all add up.
That's true. All of the back end costs of running a business like this, they add up.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, we're doing great today. I love the energy we're creating. And for those people listening, Brittany's like magic thumbs up just appeared on the screen.
It's the balloons. It's the thumbs up. I don't between the two, and it's
very reactive podcaster over there.
Well, it doesn't even matter if I'm in Restream or if I'm in Zoom. It just happens.
I feel like it's happened on FaceTime or something too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's something about you, Britt. You're just a very
expressive.
Expressive, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you ready? Timing?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Go.
All right. In chapter 8 of Punished by Rewards, Lures for Learning, Why Behaviorism Doesn't Work in the Classroom. The entire chapter unpacks exactly why all these things that we're doing, all of these structures we've built, like grades and the rewards we have, are ineffective at actually motivating kids and truthfully are harmful because of the way they seek to control children. So to start off the chapter, Alfie talks about how kids don't need rewards. So young kids, like Brittany said before, they don't need to be rewarded to learn. They want to learn. It's a part of just how the brain operates. And then at any age, rewards are less effective than intrinsic motivation for promoting learning. And I'm looking at the topics of the chapter and how motivation, if you end up like trying to put motivation into education and trying to motivate kids to learn that way, you end up treating learning as like a means to an end, and you'll make the kids not want to do it as much. And how the more we measure this and the more things we put in place, the more harmful it is for students. And then there is a whole section of this chapter too that looks at having this really tight control, especially in the realm of special education, and how harmful it is there, and how it ends up impacting self-determination. And then finally, it goes into looking at how students end up becoming so concerned with how they're doing, they forget about what they're doing, and how true learning comes from being engrossed in what you're doing. And if you're so preoccupied with how you're doing it, you're not going to be very invested in the what you're doing because you're so worried about how you are doing it, which also sets up barriers for comparison and perfectionism. And that's my take.
Boom.
All right. Look at that.
Yeah. Whoop. Okay. Ooh, all right. Let's dive in.
Yes. So to start off this episode, I always like to ask a little bit of a question about background. So could you tell us a little bit about your relationship with the love of learning?
My God.
How did that look like in school for you?
In school? No. I mean, that's why I became a teacher, is because like I loved to learn. So when I was young, I literally lived in the library because it was an environment that was controlled. It was safe, and I was surrounded by books, and I loved that. I remember going to the Toledo Public Library, and just getting in one of the study rooms and reading and making myself super comfortable and being there for hours. I love to learn with my grandparents. My grandparents always like super emphasized a love of learning. My grandpa, who I'm pretty sure had ADHD, he hated school, but he loved learning. And he ended up going into the Navy and being an engineer at Michigan State University, and he was always building something or taking something apart, and he had all of these books and like an encyclopedia set. So when I'd go over to my grandparents' house, I'd get the encyclopedia set out and I would just read and learn as much as I could about the stuff that I was interested in. Because I have ADHD, I can become very hyper focused and obsessive, to the point where like I'm just like learning, and then kind of my motivation slows down on one topic, and then I jump to another topic and I'm learning about that. The issue is that although that I have this super great love for learning, I hated school. And even when I think about all of the times when I was young, when I was really like engulfed in a subject or learning the most, or having that good relationship with learning, it was never like none of those memories are connected with anything in the classroom. And that's like, I think I was in college. I was working at the Boys and Girls Club, and I had this member who said that she was going to drop out, and she's so smart. I got a thumbs down. Yeah, I agree. But so I had this member, and she loved to learn. She was super smart, and she said she was going to drop out of high school. And I was like, well, why? And she started talking about her teachers and the system that, she is learning in. And I felt so strongly like a connection to that I was like, all right, because I was in a point in my college career where I was like, all right, I can go into art and I can pursue fine arts, like a master's in fine arts, or I can go into art education. And I decided to go into art education.
Mm.
Yeah. Like to be a teacher that inspires the love of learning in her students. So other students who love learning don't have that experience that I had. Like,
Yeah. Do you
what about,
feel like, before we go into my experience
yeah.
in the art room,
Hmm.
how does that work for you within like keeping that love of learning with the kids?
Well, art. So I have taught English and history. Um, and because I have the background in art education, I'm very focused on project-based learning
Yeah.
because that's just all I know is hands-on learning. Um, so for art education, it's it's so project-based oriented that nobody ever thinks of like just assigning a worksheet.
Yeah.
And I think the worksheets and the rote memorization, and that's where you get like people really turned off to education. So with art, I think it's easier
Yeah.
because it's just automatically in that mindset of project-based learning. Um, it is not hard to get my students to be well, it's harder at the beginning of the year or when I have a student that really struggles with perfectionism
Mm-hmm.
or really struggles with coming up with things to make. Um, but that is more anxiety based and not like, oh, I don't want to do this because this is boring. So I think with motivating my learners in my art room, that it's easier than motivating the learners in a general classroom.
Yeah. I feel that because I have taught art before
Mhm.
as well. And I do agree with that. And it's also funny because your story about growing up in the library, I'm the same way. We spent so much time at the library doing the different like community events they had, the programs they had
Mhm.
after school. I loved it there. And actually, my sister now is a librarian. And she used to work at that library that we used to go to as kids. So full circle moment right there.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I think
Yeah.
I definitely would have been a librarian if I wasn't a teacher.
Hmm.
And yeah, that would be maybe like when I retire, which, in quotes, I'll be a librarian.
I feel like you would make an incredible librarian.
I think so too. Like I'm very like I always felt a connection with Belle from Beauty and the Beast, which was like my favorite movie.
Love it. Learning new
Yeah,
things about Brittany every day.
yeah. I love it. And so I'm very Belle.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, well, for me, I used to love going to the library and learning and exploring there and doing the programs. I love like the hands-on creative stuff. I love learning in that sense. And like building things. I remember we were not able to have video games and stuff like that growing up, so I used to try to make my own version of a video game out of like those VHS tape box holders.
Yeah.
I used to use those and like cut out the front part and like put pictures inside to make it be like the images from a game changing, but I'd have like 25 to show one sequence of anything.
Yeah.
But I used to make a lot of like creative, crafty things like that. And in school, I feel like I enjoyed learning to an extent, but I definitely got bored and would tune out and zone out. And once I hit middle school, I started to recognize my grades and like what I was doing. And they had the teacher who was like, Ashton, you could be on the honor roll if you just do like a little bit more. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, I'm going to try that then. And I got into the honor roll. And then I started to get really obsessed with how well I was scoring on things.
Mm.
And I used that as validation for like what options I could have in life and what I could do. So, like to give you an example, with writing, I was like, maybe I might want to be an English major, an English teacher someday. But I didn't think I was good at writing in high school. And so I was like, if I want to do that, I have to get good at writing. and I'll prove that to myself if I can get an award for like having the top score in English class in the entire school. And like I set that goal for myself. And I'm the kind of person who, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I got it. I achieved that goal. And I just kept like pushing the milestone and wanting to like hit whatever this was. But it wasn't easy. I wouldn't say I was like naturally book smart. I had to study a lot, review a lot, and get extra help, get like tutoring before school with my teachers. It wasn't easy. And now I feel like it has impacted me too with education, because I feel like I do what that book says, like compare and use that for validation to see how well I'm doing. Like, where do I line up with my peers in terms of something? And I got to knock that off.
Well, it's insane to how much like we'll move the bar when we've achieved what we wanted to.
Yeah.
And how much our success, which we think will like bring us validation and it'll bring us happiness, but it really only creates more anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like we start comparing ourselves more, and then we start worrying about, are we going to, like let ourselves down, let other people down now that we've reached this one goal. Well, now we have to reach the next one, which he talks about.
Yeah. And like, truthfully, for me, I know I've done that in so many different categories of my life. Like, when my career's here, when I can do this on social media, when I can do this in the gym, when I can do this in my personal life. It ended up being my first year teaching when I found out that I might get laid off the day before winter break, or like the day we started winter break. We got an email saying that the budget cuts came through and the school may have to let go 3 teachers when we return from break. And I was the most recent one hired. So I was like, crap, I'm going to lose my job after winter break. And I was so incredibly anxious and ended up working out. We took furlough days. It worked out. But as a Christian during that time, I was like, okay, I have to reset myself because my identity can't rest in anything else except my relationship with God, because that's the only thing unwavering in my life. And I've seen that like time and time again with like putting your identity in different things, and I kind of reaffirmed that in the chapter 2, reading it this week.
Yeah. I think it's very like, I'm not Christian, but I was really spiritual. But I swear, like, the more engrossed you get in something like running this business, how easy it is to set that aside.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, like, if it's not contributing directly to my goals of, being able to pay off my daughter's surgery, or, being able to provide stuff for my daughter, like, it's deemed like not as important, when absolutely it 100% is important, because at the end of the day, like, this could all go away, and that would be the one thing that would have stabilizing me, is that, spirituality and the meditation. And girl, I got to get back into it.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, anyways, throughout this chapter, we got a little bit off there. But in the chapter, it talks about the way schools kind of squelch this desire for learning in kids. And you can add on to this list, but it seemed like the overall topics I saw was that education becomes not so engaging and exploratory and fun. And then it's that fact that we're making kids do things, and we're punishing them if they don't want to, or if they don't do them. And then it also looked at something interesting about like what school is actually preparing people for. And let me find it. There was a quote and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Okay. So motivation, this is on page 147. So as Richard Ryan, and a colleague argue it is not enough to conceive of the central goal of 12 years of mandatory schooling as merely a cognitive outcome. Instead, we should aim for children who are willing and even enthusiastic about achieving something in school, curious and excited by learning to the point of seeking out opportunities to follow their interests beyond the boundaries of school. If you are likely to quarrel with such a goal, yet motivation as an end, not merely a means, seems to be missing from most of the national discussion about what is wrong with our schools and how to fix them. And now in parentheses, indeed, it is spoken of too rarely, even in terms of its contribution to achievement, close parenthesis. To raise the issue is, by implication, to inquire into the very purpose of an education, a disconcerting prospect, perhaps, for those whose objective is to turn out adequately skilled workers who can increase corporate profits.
I think there were probably 3 or 4 big takeaways from this chapter for me.
Mhm.
And the emphasis that he placed on capitalism in education was one of them. The fact that we're not preparing students to love learning, but we're preparing students to make somebody else money.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. Like, I mean, I've known that, like, because when you get into education and you've been in it for a long time and you start being told that you, instead of focusing on these things, you need to be, instead of focusing on like motivating your students, like really motivating them by encouraging their interests and encouraging exploratory exploratory play, you need to be encouraging them to learn how to take a test. You need to be encouraging them to learn these specific standards or words. And you're like, well, why? And it's going to help them in the workforce. It's going to help them get to college and then they can get a job. Like, which is important,
Yeah.
right? We can't say that that's not important, especially for students who are oppressed. But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that we are purposefully disengaging them from from learning. I don't know. But okay, so I have a couple quotes that I wanted to read that's like related to that.
Let's hear them.
Okay. So remember when I told you about the footnotes and how they were banging?
Yes.
Okay. So the footnotes, it's the number 12 footnote on page 145. And to preface this, he's talking about how intrinsically motivated learners will learn and remember more because they're really enthralled with what they're doing. So the footnote it's footnote number 12, page 145. Among the theories, intrinsically motivated learners pay more attention to what they are learning, become more deeply involved in thinking about it, or are in a happier frame of mind and therefore are more apt to succeed. Intrinsically motivated learners are also more likely to respond to feedback about their performance in a way conducive to higher achievement over the long haul. They are relatively unlikely to feel controlled by it and more given to attributing their failure to lack of effort rather than lack of ability. And I think that's really powerful to me because as a young kid in school, I started to have this feeling of helplessness, which she mentions, like that the way that our system is designed, it leaves a lot of learners to move into not an area, but a feeling of helplessness.
Yeah.
Because they can't control their environment. They can't control what they're learning. They're doing their best. But at the end of the day, everything is out of their control.
Mm-hmm.
So they develop the sense of helplessness because they are in a period of developmental sensitivity. right? Like their brains are being developed at this time. So when you have a developing brain and you stick them in an environment with no control, and then you tell them that they're failing or they're not doing good enough or that they need to pay attention to like their performance and their, they're achieving below average or they're achieving not to what they're supposed to be achieving, they're going to start feeling helpless.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could just start focusing on intrinsic motivation and stop focusing so much on extrinsic motivation, that would be great. That's what the whole book is about. But
Yeah, no, it's a really tough concept because we have like what the research is showing, but then, like you said before, we also have the way society operates.
mm-hmm.
You know, it's such a messy, it's such a messy system and structure. And something else, let me find this quote. I think this one's on page 149. It's a little bit longer, but the last 3 words I think are really impactful.
Mm-hmm.
And think about them in terms of education when you hear this. So this is by Richard Ryan and Jerome Stiller. The more we try to measure, control, and pressure learning from without, the more we obstruct the tendencies of students to be actively involved and to participate in their own education. Not only does this result in the failure of students to absorb the cognitive agenda imparted by educators, but it also creates deleterious consequences for the effective agendas of schools. That is how students feel about learning. Externally imposed evaluations, goals, rewards, and pressures seem to create a style of teaching and learning that is antithetical to quality learning outcomes in school. That is, learning categorized by durability, depth, and integration. And those 3 words, I feel like they should be the buzzwords, and they're not the buzzwords in education.
Yeah.
I feel like they're the concepts of the things that we really want to change and like the big problems, right? Like you have students who I teach them English, right? And they can write proper grammar or use proper grammar when they're making an essay for me, but then they go to math to do a word problem and it's like they never saw a capital letter before. So like the durability, depth, and integration, I feel like those are the big things we should be striving for in school. But we're not. Like, what would you say the 3 biggest buzzwords are in school right now? I think data is definitely one.
Mm-hmm.
What's another?
Performance, data, and discipline. Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Yeah. Which is absolutely insane because if you think about like how you operate as a learner, everybody listening, think about when you're really engrossed in something and you're learning and you're inspired to learn more. Do you think about data, discipline, like your performance? No.
That's what the book is talking about too, because when you're so preoccupied in your performance, you're not actually doing the learning. You're so distracted by it.
Yeah. And that's the first thing that can kill. That's the first thing that will kill your interest in any hobby you take up is when you start comparing yourself to other people. Like, oh, my drawing's not as good as this chick's on the internet. Maybe I just shouldn't draw anymore. But it's the one way we motivate learners. We motivate students, not learners. Yeah, man. This book will blow your mind.
That could be our next t-shirt.
Yeah, no, we still have to do what's our phrase for our 2-minute summary? Slightly coherent?
No, I think mostly coherent, slightly chaotic.
Yeah, that's the t-shirt.
That's got to be the first one. A nice baseball cap too. So this is a perfect segue for performance orientation now. So that how am I doing thing. I also think it's interesting thinking about this and teacher evaluations.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, okay. So I want to mention this quote because it has never been so clear to me how teachers are using systems and methods that we do not appreciate being used on us. Like, this book highlighted that if we use the systems
Oh,
that
your
we use
audio just did something really weird. You might want to re-say that for people. You cut out for a second.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So if districts used the systems to motivate us that we use to motivate students, we would feel so demoralized and patronized. And guess what? We do. When because districts are using those methods. Like, okay, yeah, I can wear jeans on a Friday. Fantastic. Like, you got me donuts or pizza. Like, awesome. But how about my class size? Like, how about taking care of my actual need in the classroom? Giving me more resources, or like what I need to succeed.
Yes, this is an exact thing. I was just talking to somebody about this because I forgot who I was talking to about this. But this past week, I had an observation where the assistant principal came in and like I taught the lesson, but it wasn't paced the way the curriculum wanted it to, and he wanted me to match the pacing. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how I could do this better though. And I'm really glad my mister actually said that he would come in and show me. I asked him, and he did. But we had this meeting on Tuesday. I had no prep times after Tuesday this past week. So no prep Wednesday, no prep Thursday. I thought I had prep Friday, but I forgot I had another meeting then. And so Thursday, he messaged me. He wants to like meet up to talk about the lesson. And I'm like, yeah, I would love to. I have no prep time though. Maybe somebody could cover my classroom during dismissal or something so we can talk then. And he was like, well, like I really want to talk about this. Like it's really important that we align. And I said, yes, it's very challenging navigating teaching with no prep time. And he ended I had a meeting that ended early. So we had like 5 minutes as the kids like came into the classroom to talk about things. And even with him teaching the lesson, like he still could not get through all of the things that the pacing guide required. And the thing is, too, like going over that lesson, it'll be interesting to talk about it because there's nothing really that we could have done differently except have like a bit more time in the school day to get through it, or to have the freedom to cut something out, or to have prep time to talk about what we should modify to have it fit in that criteria. What's not going to solve the problem is just wear jeans pass.
No.
Or even a thank you email.
Yeah.
It's not going to solve anything.
Or, okay, well, there's like 3 things I want to hit with that, what you just said. First of all, you were talking to me about that.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about that. The second, okay, so if you are a new teacher and your administrator evaluates you and gives you specific things that you should have done differently, the best thing that you can do is say, awesome, I'd love to do those things. I'd love to improve. Can you come in and model that for me? Because if they can, awesome, you get an excellent learning opportunity. But for the most part, they are going to come in and they're going to be put in your shoes, and which creates a little more empathy, and it holds them accountable with their feedback, because their feedback should be useful and specific to like anybody's feedback, whether you're giving it to students or an admin is giving it to you.
Yeah.
And then second, remember when you just said, okay, so you just said a thank you email. We've all gotten that generic thank you email from like somebody who we've never really met in the district, or someone we barely see, right? And it'll just be like, thank you for all you do. Your work with kids is like so important, and ... And we just feel like it's a slap in the face, right? Because they're not like, it's like they're not hearing us. we need to put ourselves in that mindset when we give generic feedback to our kids, especially if we don't have a relationship with them,
Yeah.
because it's the same thing as that superintendent or that admin or, you know, that guy that comes in or that girl. I don't, it's not a girl very much for me, but
No, it's actually a thing I learned about my master's degree, the lack of female representation, in educational leadership, but
yeah.
continue.
Yeah. So when that person who I barely see will come around and or like send out the email and give generic like thank yous,
Yeah.
we have to use that moment that we get that thank you and how we feel to educate ourselves. How do you think our students feel when we give them that generic thank you, that generic feedback? It feels patronizing, especially if they're not listening, if we're not listening to them, or, you know, the admin's not listening to us.
Yeah. And it's tough too, because like as teachers, we're smushed. And
Mhm.
the administrators are too. Like they're also smushed by the Board of Ed. Like, and then the Board of Ed's smushed by the state.
Yep.
Like it's this one big massive sandwich no one wants to be in.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, so this brings me to this quote, which is my, like, I think that was my fourth point that I mentioned. Okay, so on page 152, he writes, when teachers feel pressured by superiors, they tend to become more controlling with their students.
Mm-hmm.
When it is emphasized that they are responsible for their students performing up to standards, teachers tend to give children less choice and less opportunity for autonomous learning. This behavior, in turn, is likely to have, how did you say that? Deleterious
Yeah. Or I think I said
effects.
deleterious, but that may be incorrect. It's one of those words that you read, but you don't actually say
Yeah.
aloud.
Deleterious effects on the children's intrinsic motivation. So I took from that, in that section, the more controlled teachers feel, the more controlling they're going to be on their students.
Yep.
And we all know a kid's learning environment is a teacher's working environment.
And it also said somewhere too in there, I have to find that quote now. I just talked about it in the reframing failure workshop I had. Oh, okay, here it is. It's on page 153. So, researchers in one experiment gave fourth grade teachers 2 tasks to teach their students. Some were told that their job was simply to help the students learn how to solve the problems. Others were warned that it was their responsibility to make sure that students performed up to standards and to do well on the test. The result, children taught by the teachers who felt pressured did not learn the tasks as well as those whose teachers were not under the gun. Another fascinating study, meanwhile, found that the mere knowledge among students that their teacher was extrinsically constrained affected their own motivation. The damage done by rewards, then, is not limited to the person who gets them. I thought that was wild. Like, even just knowing that you're constrained.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that really highlighted to me why I have such success with students, because I'm constantly telling them how much I love my job.
Yeah.
I'm constantly telling them, like, I love being there. I could work anywhere.
Mhm.
I love what I do. And it, like, they feel that. And
Mhm.
I didn't realize how much they'd feel that until I read that page.
No, it makes a big difference.
Mhm.
Even for you as the teacher doing it.
Mhm.
And saying that, try it. Try it this week. Every single day, if you're listening, try to tell the kids how much you love being there and how much you love being with them, and watch it change your whole week, how it feels to be in your classroom.
100%.
You know?
Will, yeah, you'll do it every week from here on
And
out.
it's funny though, because my resting face, I don't know if I've shown you it before, Brittany, okay? But look, this is my resting face. Let me use the sign to cover it for people who are watching. I just looked and there's like a 1 second delay.
Dude.
That's my resting face, okay? So people will come up to me and my husband when we're out and be like, "Is your wife okay?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, she's fine. That's just her face." And then the kids will be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great." And they're like, "Oh, you look like you were mad." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just chilling, just thinking about what you guys are working on."
That was
Like,
really funny.
"Oh, okay."
You looked like you looked like a Renaissance painting.
Oh,
I
thank
really
you.
want you to do it again.
That AI filter. You see those AI filters about the Renaissance paintings? All right, here's my
No.
next one.
Like Mona Lisa, but even Mona Lisa had a slight smile.
Nope, there's nothing. Not one smile.
Oh.
Actually, I'm like trying to train my face to be more smiley. Like walking down the street or in the grocery store, I try to like train my face to be like this. Which isn't that much, honestly. I feel like I'm like this when I'm walking like this. But it's like, all right, do something with your cheeks, Ashton. Do something. Just let them hang there.
Like
Anyways, for people who are listening, you'll have to go on to Instagram or YouTube and watch the replay so you can see my beautiful resting face.
That's really funny. That was really
Yeah.
good.
Thank
It was
you.
very, like a very
Yeah.
like
It's been leading kids to confessing things to me since 2017. Actually, even before then, because I was 2013 is when I first started working with kids.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh. Girl, okay, so somebody in my comments just said, "Can we add captions?" And now I'm trying to like add captions. I don't think I can. I'm trying to. I should have captions on this for as much as I advocate for accessibility. We will figure it out.
Yeah, I see the captions button, but it's not letting us add anything. It's like we have to like
Include
type our
others who
own.
are deaf or hard of hearing. Blue Raspberry 3, I absolutely agree, but I operate under the restraints of Restream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying. Oh, I know I can on Zoom, but I can on here.
Yeah. Well, we can try to troubleshoot that afterwards. Maybe we can add them
Absolutely.
after the fact too. I don't know how that works.
Oh, we
Maybe
could.
on YouTube. YouTube, you probably can watch them back with the captions.
Yeah.
But then the next thing was that competition component in the chapter that I talked about. And about how when you have these kind of systems, kids want to see how they stacked up as opposed to other people.
Yeah.
And that one was a moment for me because I feel like I still exist in that constraint of wanting to see where I fall and like if I'm average, above average, below average. For what?
I know. Average to who?
Yeah.
Well, dude, you know what you should talk about? You should talk about the that sermon that you told me about.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this was a few months ago. Well, Brittany and I were talking this week, and a few months ago, I heard this sermon from a pastor who came to visit our church, and he ended up talking about how he works at the college campus, and in the college campus, he runs a ministry, and he asked his students in the ministry how many of them could name their great grandparents, and nobody could. They couldn't name all of the great grandparents. And then he even asked them, how many of you could name your first and last name of your grandparents? And some of them could, but not everybody could. And he used that to say, like, in the span of like a couple generations, these people are like forgotten. You know, even by your family, by your ancestors are forgotten. And how the only thing really lasting you can do in your life is to live it for God, and how everything else, like it's just going to fade away. And that has been really helpful for me, being an anxious person. Somehow, maybe a little bit morbidly, to be like, nothing is permanent. Everything's going to pass away. So all that truly matters is what I do for Christ in my life.
Yeah. And that is a underlying theory of Buddhism, because I'm Buddhist. So the impermanence. If you practice Buddhism, the impermanence is heavily hit on. Everything changes. Nothing is constant. Nothing is going to stay the way it is. Everything changes. So to to just keep that in your mindset when you are using, like, you have that comparative,
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
feel like
that's true.
mhm, impermanence. Everything's impermanent.
Yeah. Well, then the last thing from this chapter that I think we should definitely touch upon is the
Mhm.
special education component,
Yo.
especially you being the special education teacher over there.
Ugh.
I really want to hear your
Oh,
take on this section.
God. Bleh.
Oh, the guttural noises are coming out for this one. All right.
Oh, because I feel like this is the hill I'm willing to die on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, controlling techniques in special education.
Yep.
Special education students receive more controlling classroom management styles than any other group. Any other group. Even when you look at how schools treat Black and brown kids, these statistics show that controlling classroom management practices are used in higher, like concentrated, I don't know, higher percentages
Yeah.
than in it. And no place should be using controlling classroom management techniques because we see that it kills creativity, it kills problem solving, it kills intrinsic motivation, it creates helplessness, it creates oppositional defiant disorder. But special education kids who are receiving special education services are 10 times more likely to be in a classroom that's using those techniques. So the section of the chapter like talks about how even teachers and clinicians who would hesitate to use such methods with other children assume it is justified for those who are classified by a distinguishing set of initials. And be, like I don't know when or like how it became a thing. Maybe it was because we typically have able-bodied teachers, teachers who don't have neurodivergencies, um, or teachers who don't have the experience of receiving special education.
I think
So,
there's so much too, though. Like, even I'm thinking back to my thesis, the
mhm.
way disability is represented in society.
Oh yeah.
This is not current data. This was from like 2015 when I started this research. But there was something along the lines of in media, disability is represented in 1% of the characters that you see. And of that
Hmm.
1%, I think 15% of people actually have disability playing the role.
Oh yeah.
And like representation is so low. And then when you actually see disability portrayed, it is oftentimes like viewed as them overcoming something or like doing something in spite
Oh
of
yeah.
disability and not with
Yeah.
disability and not living a normal life.
Hmm.
And so if you think about the way representation affects our daily life, if disability is like contained to this room in schools, if it's the kids who are represented as different with their different plans, different equipment,
Hmm.
different whatever, if you barely see it in medicine, and if policies, we actually have had policies in America. If you look them up, Google the ugly laws in America that
Hmm.
forbid public displays of disability, and you could
Yeah.
be arrested for like showing physical
Hmm.
disability in public. If
Yep.
this is the society and the culture that we create, um, it makes sense. It
Well,
shouldn't, but
what's even more messed up is when you look at that law, it was put in place to get rid of homeless people on the streets. And the only the only way they could do that, because there was such a concentrated amount of homeless people with disabilities, that they created the ugly law. Mm, I mean, that's
and like the last ones were repealed, I think in the 1980s.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or oh no, there's like if you look to see um that there is a law that says that corporations can pay people with disabilities. I think it's like
Oh,
50%.
yeah.
less than like what an able-bodied individual would be able to be
Mhm.
paid or would be paid, laws like that still exist. They
Yep.
it's but so there are a couple quotes that I want to touch on because I think they're really powerful.
Let's hear 'em.
So on page what page is this? Okay, page 153 and the first paragraph, it says um teachers report that they act in a more controlling way with such children than they do with other students, and such children being um, students who are learning disabled. The result is that even though learning disabled students were no less intrinsically motivated than their peers in the early grades, they come to be more dependent on external sources of evaluation, such as grades, rewards, and teachers' judgments, whereas regular students feel more capable of making decisions on their own. One thing I see in the special education arena, or one thing I hear, is that, well, kids can't operate if you don't have rewards. Kids can't operate. These
Mhm.
kids. Oh, that kills me. These kids can't operate unless they have somebody telling them exactly what to do. Who do you think created that system for them? Like, who do you think it made it that way? It was teachers and admin in the schools that they grew up in.
Yeah.
So, and behavior management. That's like behavioral management with like behavioral kids. Very, very controlling.
Mhm.
Mm. See,
Yeah.
now I got to calm myself down. I got to use my coping skills.
It gets
Ah!
you heated, like, this stuff
Ah!
gets you fired up.
Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
highlighted
no.
that same quote too.
And I know that we're almost out of time, but I really do think we should talk about self-determination theory real quick.
That was on the list of things. I kind of
Hmm.
breezed past it though, because we had
Yeah.
so much stuff to talk about. Yeah.
So we know, well, if you don't know what self-determination theory is a theory on motivation that looks at three needs that need to be met in order to be intrinsically motivated. And that's autonomy, belonging, and competency. And autonomy is the amount of control you feel like you have over your own life. So if you are learning in a really controlled environment where you don't have control, your intrinsic motivation, according to this theory, is going to plummet. Like you're not going to have intrinsic motivation because that one of the three needs is not being met: autonomy, belonging, and competency. And Alfie talked about how with in our school systems, we tell students exactly what they have to do, or we use extrinsic incentives to get them to do it. And that often contributes to feelings of anxiety and helplessness, and it reduces their interest in whatever they're doing, even when they're doing things that would be highly motivating to them in like other situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's wild how backwards we do things.
Mhm. Yeah.
Ugh.
But I mean, he does say like because he talks about his experience in the classroom and
Mhm.
how like he can testify. He says, "I can testify that controlling approaches can also be wielded out of desperation.
Mhm.
I lacked the skills and arguably the curriculum, which is a huge thing, to help students develop a genuine interest in learning." And that's so true.
Yeah.
We're operating in the constraints that we're given.
Mhm. And it takes time. That was the other thing. It
Mhm.
takes time to do this,
Yeah.
which, as I just shared, having 2 prep times the past week, we don't have to do our
Mhm.
job,
Mhm.
which is wild. Like, we don't have time to do our job.
Mhm. Yeah, and well, it's wild how like how certain people define what our job is. Is our job meetings and
Yeah.
analyzing data and teaching to standards, or is our job trying to ignite a passion of learning. Dude, I think we should
Yeah.
end it there.
Yeah, that's a good way to go out.
Yeah.
So then what's your action tip for caregivers and teachers?
Okay. If we want to change the system, we need to start being politically active. You need to vote. You need to know who's applying to be on your school board. You need to know who is on your, like, who's, I don't know, the city commissioner, everybody that has to do with local government. You should know what they're doing, who they are. We have to start paying attention, and we have to organize.
Yeah.
So the union, although how you feel about the union or not, like, we have to have some type of organization and representation of teachers. And then my other action tip, I have two. My other action tip is start working with students. When we start meeting students' needs, we are cultivating a generation that can stand up and recognize oppressive systems, which is what we're operating under. We're operating under an oppressive system with the system of education and how it's designed right now.
Mhm.
So if we grow these kids up to be empathetic and recognize that we have to meet people's needs more than we have to, I don't know, make somebody else money, then they can be the change makers. Yeah.
Oh, you should have ended that. I should have gone first, but you should have gone out with that.
What's your
Man,
action tip, Ash?
Mine is not nearly as eloquent. Mine is to relinquish control where you can. And to give students more autonomy, make them feel confident, create that sense of belonging in your space, and then see how it changes things for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you definitely should have gone last.
No, I think both of them together blended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
all right. Do you want to go through comments?
Yes, let's see what we have. Also, can you hear my cat screaming at me in the background?
Muffin.
Yes. Gracie, her nickname is Muffin. Yeah, she is yelling at me.
Okay, so like I'm a squirrel. I love people's handles. They're my favorite. Like I'm a squirrel asked,
That's
hey,
beautiful.
which book will blow your minds? Which book will blow your minds? We are reading Alfie Kohn's Punished by Rewards.
It's very well loved over here if you're watching this recording right now.
Oh yeah. Well, I have the digital copy. I really like the Kindle copy because you can just click and highlight. And I'm going to take a photo of that person because I want to message them. We are reading Punished by Rewards. Okay. And can you please add captions? No, I couldn't figure it out. I do not understand you all. I am a teacher and would benefit from you all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Blue Raspberry. I will try next time. Somebody wanted to know what speech impediment you have.
Oh, I don't know the name for it, but I know that it impacts different sounds I make.
Okay. And somebody wanted to know how old we are. I'm 36.
I'm 28.
And that's it.
Awesome. Somebody wanted me to say hi, Katie.
Oh my God.
I wanted you to say hi, Katie, too. You should do it, though.
Hi, Katie. What was the handle?
Let me find it. It wasn't Katie, I don't think. Let me see.
Man, this is where the real fans are.
637.
Huh. Oh, I don't know. All right, everybody. You want to send us out, Ash?
All right, I got this. All right, we hope that this episode left you feeling ignited and remoralized and re-energized. And until next time,
bye.
Bye. I think we should have said it in reverse order there.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, okay. Bye.
Bye.